All right, so next up we have the blur tool. So we're gonna go in and find, here's Independence Jack, the layer. That's this image itself. Um, and we are going to double click inside of it because it's a smart object. We're gonna make a copy and convert to smart object. That way, when we come up to filter, there's blur. Here are a ton of different blurs that we have options for within this. Probably some of the most common ones that we're going to use are going to be things like the Gaussian, or however you say that, blur. This one basically treats it like depth of field, and we can zoom out on this thing, but it's got a live preview checked, and as we increase the radius, it just makes things look kind of out of focus, or the depth of field happens. We can go really extreme or not quite so much. So that's kind of the Gaussian blur version. We do have other ones as well where it's like box blur, which kind of has the same similar effect, although it's a little bit different. It treats it more like boxes rather than necessarily kind of a feathered filter. That's kind of the main ones that are used in here, although we also have radial blurs where we can choose different kind of the spins and or the zooms with it. And so let's kind of just come in here, hit OK, and then give it a second to render. But it gives us kind of the radial blur effect as well. So just different ways that we can then handle the different blurs that we might want to use accordingly. So for this activity, we're going to come in and we're going to actually use the Gaussian blur. We're going to bump this up to probably about an 8. Let's test how that looks. Yep. And then we're going to hit OK. And again, so because this is a smart filter, we have a mask, and we can use our brush tool, and we're going to just quickly come in and hide that Gaussian blur. Now I have a relatively soft brush in here, and all I'm trying to do is come in and make this thing feel like we have a depth of field. So let's say you didn't quite get the depth of field that you wanted to in the shot, then we can come in and we can go and adjust it. So I'm going to come in and bring him back in a little bit, and it doesn't have to be perfect for this. You'd probably want to spend a lot more time. You'd actually kind of slightly mix layers a little bit, because notice around this side we have some blur going on with him. So what I'd end up actually really wanting to do this correctly. So we have this right here, and I'm about done. We'll zoom out back to 0. We can just kind of see some differences there. So that's not exactly what I want to do. So I'm actually going to make a copy of this again, and I'm going to come up and put it on top. And we're going to use the quick object selection tool, and we're going to select out Jack, give it a second, and then we're going to do a content aware fill. Basically, we want to get rid of him, because what we really want to do is we want to blur out everything but him. And so we're going to come in, and now we're going to go up to Edit, Fill. Let's do content aware fill, and we're going to pop this and kind of see what happens here. And I'm going to zoom out on this one, and we're going to deselect this area just so it doesn't pull from here, and we're going to kind of more select because we can still kind of see that happening up there. And we're going to want to kind of just go through, adjust this a little bit more, and then that does a better job at it. It doesn't have to be perfect. I'm going to change this, instead of an output of a new layer, we're going to do current layer, and we're going to hit OK. And then we're going to hit Command D. It doesn't need to be perfect, because as we come in and we're going to do filter, and then this top option just repeats the last step. We can then go there. It blurs this out a little bit more, and we don't have to worry about it. And then from here, we can Command click and we're going to just apply this layer mask to this one. And then from there, we're going to, let's hide this thing and hide this one. And we're going to paint with white and bring this side back in. And what this does is it allows us, there we go. You kind of see where we needed to do that. And then we can bring this in, and then it allows us to apply that blur behind there. And then from here, we're going to need to still mess with the layers itself. So this layer can also have a mask on top of it. And I'm going to come in and we're going to hide the blur. And then on this mask, we're going to hide the sky, which has our blur to it. And then we're getting a little bit of checkered because the bottom is coming through, and we want to bring that back. And then we just want to come through and make sure everything is kind of hidden. And I didn't get this edge because I didn't zoom out far enough. And that gives us kind of the general guidelines. And from there, what we can end up doing is we can come through and bring back, and this is the benefits of using masks and layers, is then we can come in and bring him back in and make it look like he's part of the actual area. So now I need to come back in and clean up the edges around the corners and around him a little bit more, just so we can get rid of kind of that, what we can notice of that blur effect. Because now it's no longer kind of extending beyond that. It's really kind of just, it's made him a lot more crisp, and then we are able to get that blur effect a lot more accurate of what we would kind of end up seeing with an image like that. Even though we would never really be able to kind of make this happen, to have that kind of shallow depth of field, we can then kind of go in and do it post-production wise. So that's kind of the end result. I keep messing up with the little corners, and then we just need to kind of bring this area back a little bit more again. And about done. We'll hit Command 0 to bring us out, and then we get that crispness as well as the background. We'll hit Command S or Control S on a PC to save. Give it a couple seconds, and once it's done loading, we can close out, and we've made that adjustment within here. So that's kind of how we can use filters to get different things that we might not normally be able to get. And hopefully that helps you kind of understand some of the things that can be done. Again, there's a lot more filters throughout all of this. For example, actually, let's go ahead and do that really fast. So that completes that section. You guys will save it like that, but I just wanted to show you really fast filter. And then there are things like stylize, which we can make it look like tiles, oil painting, stuff like that. Pixelate, different ways that we can pixelate, and then distort. So spherize makes it so that the image, if we come in here like this, and we'll zoom out, this is actually probably the wrong one to do it to. Let's go ahead and shrink, hide these, make a copy, and then we'll go up to filter and where to go? Distort, spherize. From here, we're trying to make it look like it's been more part of a circle, and so we can kind of change the amount of how much it bulges out or so on. If we actually come through and do a marquee and make an ellipse, let's make it actually a little bit bigger than that. There we go. And then let's actually go select inverse. I'm just going to do this really quickly, delete this, Command D, and then we go up to that same filter again to distort and spherize. Now, when we zoom out, we can kind of see a little bit better of what's happening. It's trying to kind of crop this down and make it look more spherical. It is taking into account the edges, so if we were to come in and crop this down again and make it and confirm that cropping, then what happens when we do this again, it'll actually treat it more like a circle itself. So we're going to go to distort, spherize, then when we zoom out and get a preview, it treats it more like a circle. We increase that to it, okay. Then it kind of goes like that. Notice how here in the center it looks right, whereas we kind of stretch and skew the edges. So that's kind of how you end up doing that. I'm going to hit I'm going to close out or hit Command W or Control W, and don't save this to maintain what you guys should be doing. So those are some of the filters, the extra filters that you guys might end up using throughout your Photoshop experience. And let's move on to the next section.